On a winding, treacherous mountain road, three robbers were frantically escaping with the pink diamond worth 8.5 billion euros they had just stolen, while an unidentified pursuing group relentlessly followed behind. All three quickly grabbed their prepared weapons and engaged in a breathtaking firefight. However, under overwhelming firepower, their tires were quickly shot out, causing the car to completely lose control. Just when they thought they couldn't escape death, the situation suddenly turned around. Who were these robbers after all? Why did they risk everything to steal such a priceless pink diamond? And who was the one who saved them? The story begins a few days earlier. One evening, an African airline flight landed at Brussels' Zaventem Airport, but no one suspected that this plane was being monitored by a mysterious group. Immediately after landing, a beautiful flight attendant hurriedly entered the break room. She quickly removed her gloves and hat, then took out a strange laptop and a mobile phone. After that, she installed a camera by the window. Once everything was done, she contacted her accomplices via headset. Surprisingly, the man she contacted was none other than Donnie, the notorious bank robber who had just committed a robbery not long ago. And the woman was actually not a flight attendant, but Giovanna, a member of Donnie's gang. Clearly, their presence here was not coincidental. After being wanted by the police, Donnie had fled to Europe. This time, he targeted the world's largest diamond exchange center, which housed countless precious diamonds. That evening, a shipment of sample diamonds was to be transported to Nice, France. To gain entry into the exchange center, Donnie led a small group of gunmen disguised as police to hijack the plane carrying the diamonds. Giovanna's task was to monitor the situation inside the airport. Waiting for the opportune moment, Donnie and his accomplices stormed the airport, using the pretext of a bomb threat to lock down and inspect the scene. They quickly shot down the security cameras, subdued all the staff, then escorted the notorious terrorists swiftly into the aircraft cabin. After ensuring there were no anomalies inside, they used specialized equipment to cut open the cargo bay door and retrieve the sample diamonds. However, the destroyed camera had attracted the attention of the airport police. He urgently contacted others to come and check. Upon receiving the report, police cars patrolling nearby immediately rushed to the scene. Giovanna noticed the change and signaled her accomplices to retreat immediately. After Donnie and his accomplices arrived, they quickly left the scene with the diamonds. With Giovanna's guidance, they successfully shook off the police, then managed to slip onto a container truck about to leave the airport. Thanks to this, they narrowly escaped. The next day, the plane hijacking was widely reported by the media. International police officer Nick also read the news. Previously, he had been suspended for 6 months for improper use of his firearm. However, upon learning that this robbery might be related to the notorious Black Panther gang, Nick immediately frowned. Clearly, he had a deep-seated grudge against this group. Therefore, although unable to directly participate in the investigation, he still used his connections within the police force to go alone to Nice, France, preparing to cooperate with local police to apprehend Donnie and his accomplices. In another development, Donnie, with the help of his accomplices, successfully disguised himself as a London jewelry merchant. However, stealing the sample diamonds was only the first step. The ultimate goal for Donnie and his gang was the vault here. So, after a short night's rest, he immediately went to meet the buyer. Finally, thanks to the sample diamonds in his possession, he smoothly entered the diamond exchange center. Along the way, Donnie quietly observed his surroundings. As a result, he discovered that the center was extremely heavily guarded, with surveillance cameras at every step, leaving almost no blind spots. This made Donnie a bit anxious, but he still tried to remain calm. Then, under the buyer's guidance, he managed to rent an office within the exchange center, facilitating their later plans. However, they quickly encountered difficulties. Donnie intended to use the pretext of renting a safe deposit box to enter the vault, but was unexpectedly refused by the client manager because only clients meeting specific standards were qualified to rent boxes in the vault. So the next day, Donnie arranged to meet the previous buyer to quickly sell the pink diamonds they had just stolen. But unexpectedly, the appraiser discovered a micro-tracking chip inside the diamond. Clearly, someone else was also looking for this batch of diamonds. Seeing the tracking chip, the buyer immediately realized this batch of diamonds was problematic and insisted on an extremely low transaction price. Donnie tried to bargain, but ultimately had to concede to the buyer's firm gaze. However, upon returning to the temporary base, Donnie discovered many unfamiliar faces inside. Giovanna explained that these people were all elite thieves. Because this diamond heist was extremely difficult, Giovanna had assembled this group, preparing to rob the 8.5 billion euro worth of diamonds in the vault together. Before Donnie could even speak, Giovanna quickly began outlining the plan. Donnie, as the mastermind of this heist, would use his identity as a jewelry merchant to figure out the safest route to the vault. The others were also assigned specific tasks. After that, they immediately sprang into action. Early the next morning, Donnie and two accomplices went to the road they were certain they would have to take during their escape. They stood on high ground observing the surroundings, discovering this mountain road was winding, treacherous, and full of danger. But fortunately, there were no surveillance cameras or license plate recognition systems along the way. Donnie decided they would use four-wheel drive off-road vehicles, but demanded that all automatic systems on the vehicles be dismantled because life must always be in one's own hands. In another development, Nick met with the local police. Looking at the connections and information arranged on the whiteboard, everyone realized this was not a simple case. Moreover, the members of this jewelry heist gang mostly came from elite security forces or the military. Therefore, they worked very professionally, making it very difficult to track their movements. Furthermore, after more than 10 years of development, they had established fixed partners in Western Europe, making their capture extremely challenging. Nick offered his perspective. He believed the mastermind behind the airport heist was very likely the suspect in the Los Angeles robbery some time ago, because many characteristics of the two cases were extremely similar. Therefore, everyone carefully re-examined the footage of the airport robbery, unexpectedly making a discovery. Nick spotted Donnie's figure in a hidden corner of the camera feed. But when questioned by the local police, he concealed his surprise, merely stating the robbery suspect was Donnie, then stood up and asked to leave the police station. Why did Nick choose to deny it? Could it be he had some undisclosed plan? That evening, as soon as Donnie returned to his residence, he felt something was wrong, only to find Nick sitting at the dining table eating dinner, clearly having waited for a long time. Although extremely tense and uneasy inside, Donnie did not choose to flee immediately, but warily drew his gun, sat down opposite Nick, preparing to see what Nick really wanted. Donnie thought the opponent was just an ordinary cop, lacking jurisdiction in France. Unexpectedly, as soon as he sat down, Nick produced his international police badge, indicating he could execute an arrest warrant at any time. However, that was not the purpose of his trip. Just as Donnie sat up straight, the gun in his hand was easily disarmed by the opponent. But strangely, Nick didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he told Donnie that he had been disciplined because of the robbery, now had nothing left, and was tired of the miserable life, so he wanted to join them to rob the Diamond Exchange Center, earning some retirement money. Remembering the rumors that Nick had been fired, Donnie did not doubt his words. After some threats and enticements, Nick convinced Donnie, as Donnie's friend, to meet Giovanna. Just like that, he successfully joined the Black Panther gang. Although Nick was formerly a police officer, Giovanna wasn't worried, because everyone in this gang had a dubious background. As long as there was enough money, she was confident she could control Nick. Not long after, Donnie went to the Diamond Exchange Center again. Fortunately, this time he managed to rent a safe deposit box. That evening, the whole group went to a bar to celebrate. The mission finally had progress. However, a drunk Nick unexpectedly got into a conflict with others. Donnie wanted to help Nick out, so he also got involved, quickly attracting the police's attention. After being lectured, the two walked out of the bar arm in arm. As soon as they were out of the police's sight, they were abducted into a car by a mysterious group. The car sped off into the night. No one knew where they were being taken. When their hoods were removed, they discovered they were on a ship, surrounded by the vast sea. Then, both were taken onto the deck. The mob boss opposite told them that in the batch of sample diamonds Nick had previously stolen, there was a pink diamond that was the item they intended to trade with another gang. But now the pink diamond was missing. The fierce boss threatened them to return it quickly, or they would be blown to pieces. Finally, he pushed both of them into the sea. The intervention of this new force made the situation more tense and complicated. However, the pink diamond had already been placed in the vault of the exchange center by the buyer. To return alive, they had to quickly get into the vault and retrieve the large diamond. But clearly, this was not an easy task. After careful investigation, Donnie finally grasped the situation inside the exchange center. The entire center had 127 surveillance cameras, all connected to the central security system, but only 10 TV monitors were turned on to display camera feeds in a loop. This meant that during that broadcast cycle, 117 cameras were recording images that would not appear on the control monitors. Furthermore, their security system had its own security mechanism. All surveillance cameras could not record, only be viewed live. Therefore, as long as they figured out this pattern, they could move around without any obstacles. But there was still a tricky problem. Only authorized judicial police officers were qualified to enter the vault. Giovanna had previously tried to bribe an internal employee but failed. Thus, Nick, who possessed a police ID, became the key to breaking through in this plan. Next, Nick used the excuse of helping Donnie store diamonds to successfully pass the security check of the exchange center, then followed the manager into the vault. At this time, other members of the gang were monitoring the movements of the two through a micro camera attached to Nick's vest, ready to provide support at any time. The camera quickly focused on the inside of the vault. While the safe deposit box was open, Nick quickly glanced inside, confirming the pink diamond the mob boss wanted was in the box. Then, he calmly left the vault. Giovanna and the others also discovered through the micro camera that the control device in the hallway was higher than expected, requiring them to figure out a way to overcome it. The next day, a fully equipped armed team arrived in Nice, bringing a batch of advanced weapons and equipment to assist Donnie and his accomplices in carrying out the heist. Not long after, Nick again used the excuse to enter the vault. While the staff wasn't paying attention, he quickly tampered with the camera in the hallway. It turned out the spray bottle disguised as mouthwash contained a new shielding material that could block infrared rays, bypassing the alarm device in the vault. The staff naturally didn't notice anything unusual. Everything was ready. The group took advantage of the night to act. At this time, the staff inside the exchange center were happily drinking beer and watching football, immersed in the exciting atmosphere of the match. Even the security personnel responsible for monitoring the surveillance cameras were affected by the lively atmosphere, becoming extremely lax. At the same time, Nick and his accomplices confidently began their operation. But they had no idea that someone had already planned a double-cross. Thanks to the biological mask on his face, Donnie passed the security check at the entrance, driving straight inside the exchange center. At this time, the surveillance camera footage in the parking lot had been replaced beforehand, so the security personnel didn't detect anything unusual. Next, the group, wearing black masks, used rope ladders to climb onto the building's rooftop. This process was truly breathtaking. Then, under Giovanna's guidance, they avoided the surveillance cameras, quickly advancing towards the vault's location. During this period, even a 1-second deviation would cause them to be detected by the cameras. Fortunately, both sides coordinated perfectly. Donnie and his accomplices directly rappelled down from the elevator shaft to the target area, then used technology to shield the cameras, stealthily passing through the corridor leading to the vault. During this time, the security personnel felt something was wrong, but since the alarm device didn't go off, he paid no attention. At this point, they had arrived in front of the vault door, used specialized equipment to unlock it, and went inside. After entering the vault, they didn't say a word but opened the safe deposit box Donnie had rented. But they discovered the pink diamond was gone. Everyone was stunned. Next, they hurriedly pried open other safe deposit boxes. In just a moment, jewelry was scattered everywhere. However, the pink diamond remained missing. In another development, the manager watching football suddenly felt uneasy and decided to return to the exchange center to check. No matter how much he liked watching football, he couldn't neglect his duty. Seeing this, Giovanna quickly notified everyone to retreat immediately. The others, upon hearing this, stuffed cash and jewelry into their backpacks. But at this moment, Donnie was solely focused on finding the pink diamond. Fortunately, at the last moment, he finally found it among the jewelry scattered all over the floor. The manager had taken the elevator to the vault floor. However, just as he was about to enter, he found the fingerprint lock unresponsive. He frowned, looked around, saw nothing unusual, and decided to go back to the office for the key. At this moment, Donnie and his accomplices were hiding in the elevator shaft, waiting for the manager to leave. They quickly climbed out and prepared to escape the building the way they came. However, their safe window for retreat was only 60 seconds. Luckily, they perfectly managed their time, slipping into the emergency exit. Giovanna, who was coordinating, breathed a sigh of relief. Donnie and his accomplices didn't dare delay for a second, immediately rushing to the rooftop. Nick suddenly had an accident. An iron pipe used for support suddenly fell. The loud noise upon landing immediately attracted the security guard's attention. Someone quickly ran out to check the situation. Left with no choice, Nick had to exert all his strength to climb back onto the rooftop, then threw his backpack to his accomplices on the opposite side, telling them to leave first, while he would find his own way to handle the situation. Fortunately, Nick managed to evade the searching guards, following a safe route to find a way out. But unexpectedly, upon reaching the second floor, he encountered another security guard. To escape quickly, Nick was forced to open fire, but the opponent was wearing a bulletproof vest and wasn't injured. Nick took the opponent's gun and turned to leave. At this time, the alarm siren echoed throughout the building. Nick agilely evaded the pursuing forces, reached the back of the building, and contacted his successfully retreated accomplices to request support. However, A white Porsche suddenly appearing in the parking lot attracted the security personnel's attention. They immediately dispatched forces to search for suspicious individuals. Giovanna, commanding remotely, also quickly packed her things and left. Giovanna also met up with Donnie and the others. They quickly tore off the white wrap of the car, then changed the license plates. After completing everything, the five decided to split up. They thought their plan was perfect, but just as the car entered the previously surveyed mountain road, Donnie noticed two unidentified vehicles tailing them. The three people in the car immediately became vigilant, hastily grabbing weapons, preparing to open fire. As the car entered the tunnel, Nick hesitated no longer, engaging in a fierce firefight with the pursuers. However, due to their disadvantageous position and the fact that the opponents outnumbered them, the three were constantly on the defensive. Nick was also hit by a bullet during the shootout. Donnie, who was driving, didn't hesitate, slammed the accelerator, and sped out of the tunnel. The two sides chased each other on the winding mountain road, engaging in a breathtaking firefight. A moment later, Nick seized an opportunity. During a turn, he shot the driver behind them, causing the car to lose control and fall off the cliff. But the danger was not over. The tires of the trio's car were also shot out by the opponents, causing it to lose control and crash into the mountainside ahead. Donnie tried to restart the car, but failed. At this time, the pursuers had stepped out of their car. Nick, knowing the situation, raised his hands. But unexpectedly, the next second, a series of gunshots rang out. The aggressive pursuers suddenly collapsed. Nick, stunned, stepped out of the car. Unexpectedly, the person who resolved everything was the same mob boss who had kidnapped him the other day. At this point, Donnie also understood the opponent's purpose, so he didn't hesitate to hand over the pink diamond. The boss also did them a final favor, giving them a car key, telling them to quickly leave this troublesome place. Not long after, the three arrived at a fishing village in Italy, meeting Giovanna and another person. What surprised Nick even more was meeting Rodden, the mastermind behind this gang. Clearly, the opponent was very satisfied with this haul. Although missing one priceless diamond, the other jewelry and cash were enough for them to live lavishly for some time. But just as everyone was preparing to celebrate, Nick wore a very complicated expression. The next second, a special task force suddenly burst in, arresting all participants in the heist. At this moment, Donnie seemed to understand what had happened. He glared at Nick walking behind. Nick was escorted towards the police car by local police. But where no one could see, the police officer uncuffed Nick. It turned out all of this was planned in coordination between Nick and the local police. He pretended to join Donnie's gang, but always secretly reported information to the police. However, at this moment, he also felt very conflicted because the two had gone through life and death situations together. Watching Donnie being taken away in the police car, Nick felt mixed emotions. Therefore, he decided not to interfere further with the investigation of this case. Could things really end so simply? In another development, the mob boss read the news of Donnie's arrest in the newspaper. An idea sparked in his mind, and he immediately ordered his subordinates to carry it out. Not long after, Nick visited Donnie. He sincerely apologized to Donnie, then subtly hinted for Donnie to pay attention to his back left. A few days later, Donnie applied for bail for medical treatment. But on the way to escort, an unexpected incident occurred. Two armed helicopters suddenly appeared. A group of gunmen descended from the aircraft, subdued all the escorting police, then cut the restraints for the still bewildered Donnie, putting him on the helicopter. Afterwards, they flew to a villa in Sardinia. The one who saved Donnie was precisely the mob boss from that day. Additionally, the mastermind behind the pink diamond was also waiting there. It turned out, in their eyes, Donnie was a rare talent. He had planned 2 major heists, but managed to escape successfully each time, enough to prove how strong his capabilities were. Therefore, they had the idea of recruiting talent, hoping Donnie could work for them. At the same time, Nick also received a comforting message. This time the wolf has changed its nature. The truth will eventually be revealed. See you again. Nick saw the message and smiled, seeming to anticipate something in his heart. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment below.